Morning. I realised from last week that Watchtower's made us quite anxious to find the absolute 100% truth, and the only way we can get salvation is by joining their organisation because they have the truth. Now, is that absolutely correct? First of all, Jesus gives us some very good advice. In John chapter 14 and verse 1, he said, "Let your hearts not be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me, because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life." But there's some help. In verses 15 onwards, Jesus said, "If you love me, you'll keep my commandments. I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper." That's grand. We've got a helper. He said it's the Spirit of truth. Now, the world can't receive this because they don't know God. So in order to get the Spirit of truth, we first of all need to get to know our God. Now, there are many teachers out there and thousands of religions, and some of them get it spectacularly wrong. How do we know? Well, we're going to rely on the Spirit of truth, but I'd like to look at the story of Job. Now, as we know, Job suffered many losses and he was very, very sick. And he had 3 so-called friends who came along and said to him, "Look, you've sinned badly. You wouldn't be in this position if you hadn't sinned." They claimed that prosperity was a mark of righteousness and adversity showed that you were very wicked. Well, now we know that's not true. The wicked prosper and it's the righteous who suffer. But they got a couple of other things wrong as well. In Job chapter 22, Elihu claimed this: "Is it any pleasure to the Almighty if you are in the right? Or is it gain to him if you make your ways blameless?" He was claiming that God didn't care whether you were good or bad. And then in chapter 15 and verse 15, Elihu also said, "Behold, God puts no trust in his holy ones, in his angels, and the heavens are not pure in his sight." Well, now, neither of those things were true. God trusts the angels. He asks them to do things, and he knows that they'll do them. And the heavens are pure. God's creations are perfect. Now, Job reacted to this quite strongly, and he said to his 3 so-called friends, "I'm pure. I don't have transgressions. I am clean. There is no iniquity in me." Now, there was a young man sitting on the side listening to this, and he realised that both sides were wrong. Now, how did he know? Well, this was Elihu, and in the chapter 34 of Job, in verse 3, he said, "The ear tests words as the palate tastes food." It's a lovely saying. So we can test words that we hear, but what did Elihu test it against? Well, he probably only had the first part of Genesis, of the creation account and mankind's fall into sin. But he knew that God was very loving, very kind. He did care whether we were good or bad, and he loved us so much to give us this lovely creation. However, he also knew that we were sinful. None of us was perfect. We know that Elihu had got it right because God himself says so in chapter 42. And he said to Elihu, he said, "My anger burns against you and your 2 friends, because you have not spoken about me what is right, as my servant Job has." Elihu and his 2 friends had claimed that God was cold, didn't care about us, was aloof from us, which was far from true. So we can test the words that we hear from various religions. I'm going to put a little disclaimer in here. We're going to rely heavily on the Spirit of truth, but the Spirit is reasonable. It's not picky. So we're going to get the basics right. There's no salvation in anybody else, no organisation, apart from Jesus Christ. This is the arrangement that God has put in place for us. Now we're going to add the details that we've got from the apostles and from the Apostle Paul. These are not easy to understand, but we're going to do our best. But we're not going to be overly picky about the details, the reason being that we must remember we've been scattered, and that's not easy to live with. We need each other. We need the encouragement that we can give each other. There's room for variation of thought and for it all to fit into one colourful picture. The Bible is not a catechism. It's not a strict, right, learn this exactly as we tell you. We're supposed to think about it and make it our own. So we rely on the Spirit, and it will guide us, as Jesus said in John chapter 16 and verse 13. Thank you so much for watching.